want to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brandflakes here, back with a new Chaos Zero Nightmare video. For today's video, I want to make a tier list over the Chaos, or rather the characters inside Chaos and how strong they are. Now, of course, this video will probably release a bit after Serenial releases, and unfortunately, since I'm at home for the holidays, I might pull her at home, but I won't be able to play her properly in Chaos, and I won't be able to provide my gameplay and all that. So odds are I won't pull her. Odds are I'm just gonna be doing dailies for the next 3 weeks until I'm home, sometime early January, and so this content shouldn't be outdated because the Lab Zero shouldn't be swapped out, and hopefully I'll be back. I mean, I'll be back before the new seasonal Chaos comes out, so I should be able to remake this appropriately for that content if there are major changes. So if you're here for Serenial, sorry, this is all being pre-recorded on the same 2 days as the last few videos, so it's just how it is because I need to get content to make both YouTube and Smilegate happy with my posting schedule. With all that said, getting straight into the actual tier list, for a quick explanation, these, I'm basically always running Veronica Mika because I prefer having a clean run as opposed to pushing difficult chaos runs. And I know that Mika is a character that is a crutch, and that's why she's super strong, and Veronica is also a crutch. I do know that there are certain teams that are functional in higher difficulty chaos that perform maybe better than Veronica Mika +1, but I don't push those high level difficulty chaoses. So keep that in mind when I talk about this tier list. This is all under the assumption that you're running in difficulty 8 or a lower level chaos, and I think this should scale upwards, but again, could be wrong because I don't run stronger. I don't run the hardest content because I am more interested in making funny decks and building it out until Smilegate gives us real rewards for pushing harder stuff. So going into Veronica, or actually, again, going into more analysis, basically the tiers are based around how required the characters need their, or how required epiphanies are for the character and how good they feel when you do and don't hit those epiphanies. So with that in mind, going into Veronica, Veronica essentially has a kit that is perfect for Chaos. Basically, Veronica and Mika are at the state where their base kits are so good for Chaos that you can actually just delete a bunch of cards and they're still perfectly functional in Chaos. So Veronica herself, obviously, if you go off the assumption that you're keeping everything, each one of Veronica's cards are extremely powerful. Her basics and her shield, I mean, shield's really whatever, but her basic has a small chance of generating ballistas, which can basically let you win certain fights that you might have otherwise lost with the extra massive damage from the extra ballistas. And even beyond that, the very first card you start off with, Firing Preparation, not only has initiation, but is one of the best cards in the game for just consistent and consistent damage over turn. And obviously in Chaos, you're not really one-turning much, but even in Chaos, you can one-turn with Veronica with, again, getting an extra ballista from Rapid Fire or having the one Epiphany that generates an extra ballista for free. Actually, no, you can't even get the extra ballista because it's only at the start of the next turn. But basically, her ballistas are one of the strongest things in the game. You can see here that at the end of the turn, you do 150% extra attacks to a random enemy. That already massively outscales stuff like basic attacks. And also benefiting Veronica is the fact that extra attack scaling on memory fragments is a final damage modifier. So she gets incredible value from memory fragments, which makes her damage way higher than most things ever should be. And not even mentioning that she does still get scaling from stuff like potentials because her ballistas are counted as unique cards. So if you scale up unique cards, your ballistas are going to do 170% baseline, and then they're going to do even more based on the extra attack damage lines you have on your substats. And along with that, all of her cards, literally none of these can miss. Her repos, you literally cannot miss a repose epiphany if you're just in Chaos because there are only 2 truly awful reposes. The reload equals the number of other combatant skill cards and discard all other combatant cards. But because there's only 2 terrible reposes, that means you're guaranteed to get a draw 2 still. And baseline, a 1-mana draw 2 in Chaos is very good. Obviously, generically speaking, the 0 cost chaos or repose is much better, and the draw 2 decrease one of them by 1 is technically nearly on the same level, but it's a little less flexible. And obviously the other draw 2 with reload based on skill cards is technically the worst option, but it still retains the draw 2 shield and all that goodness from repos that you otherwise have. So repos literally cannot miss. You always get draw 2 value, and at worst you're getting reload value, and that means that you don't have to get pendant immediately and you still get the reload generation. So it still adds damage. Even the worst repos for Veronica, which is the generic Epiphany, will still give you mark enemies, agony, maybe +1, or +2 morale. No matter what, repos will always hit. Same thing with Pen of Resolution. You can see here that there's two pretty bad epiphanies based on like what you're looking for in a run, but fortunately, just like repos, only having two bad epiphanies means that your last epiphany will always be good enough. Obviously, if you're trying to get certain decks online, Veronica even has a unique upgrade for Pendant Resolution, which makes her even better because this means that this card cannot be selected for duplication. So that means that this is like, if you're trying to like piggyback somebody and get a god build for one character out of the Veronica Mika wheelchair, this is super powerful for that because you're essentially getting a remove for free for just collecting a epiphany properly. And Kowalski continues that trend where you do have two pretty bad epiphanies for Kowalski when it comes to like just raw damage output. Because I mean these two aren't even too terrible because this is just massive damage for one ballista and this is also like more ballista damage. But generically speaking, like the other epiphanies are so great because they do allow you to draw more and they still also give you damage. Like essentially, Kowalski cannot miss. The reason why these two are bad is because if you're like getting a bit luckier or if you need a Scuff Veronica build, these other four cards are better for that. And the only miss you can get, or the two misses you would get outside of these two, will be the draw one options. But cycling stuff for 1 mana is still very good, especially considering that it gives you more damage to your ballistas. And then obviously, plus 150% damage to a ballista or generate an extra ballista if you hit a skill card with a draw. And getting draw 2 is absurdly strong for Chaos and even quite decent outside of Chaos if you're a weaker player trying to get online for like early basic clears or just even getting 500,000 points on Great Rift. And then even the Mythic card. The Mythic card is by far the weakest part of her kit because the +1 reload stack is not super great. But if you have enough or Manifestation Egos on her, you can make this boosted quite powerfully, which is mainly just having more dupes of her, which is quite rare. But even just as a baseline, like if you have the mana to spare for Bombardment Prep and you need some little more damage, it is still a 50% damage buff for reload or for your ballista, assuming you don't have it maxed out already. And once again, since it is a unique tag, it does not appear for duplication, which is something that a lot of characters will not share. So Veronica is just super good, and she has one of the best egos in the game for she has one of the best egos full stop in the game because at least for Chaos, because it gives you maximum reload, which if you have Bombardment Prep is plus 200% damage. Without it, it's plus 150% damage, which means that all of your ballistas will just start pumping. And then also it's AoE, and it does really healthy AoE damage, and it's cheap. So Veronica is literally the perfect package for Chaos, and she is just by far the best unit in the game for Chaos, in my opinion. Now, Mika is mainly here because she's a really good support. We all know what Mika does. Like, people even riot against using Mika in Chaos because she makes it too easy, apparently. So that's the quality of the characters that everyone else is fighting for. So Mika, very much like Veronica, she comes with a very, very powerful base kit. The water arrow is by far her weakest aspect, but you can always remove that immediately if you're going for like a proper Chaos run. But even with a weak water arrow, there are a lot of scenarios and a lot of monsters that require you to hit them in order to like take out a buff or trigger a debuff in order to make the run more proper. And then having water barriers, like obviously Mika is a dedicated healer, so you will always build her with a lot of defense, which makes her base healing very, very powerful. And Source of Water is just one of the best generic cards in the game, giving you AP as well as a competitive heal, costing 0, and then all the epiphanies. You literally cannot miss with any epiphany except for maybe the exhaust. But like, once again, that's just one of the 5 options, and therefore you literally cannot miss with Source of Water. It either improves or it gets super improved when it comes down to like decreasing stress for Chaos runs, or decreasing its cost by 1 if you have waves, if you're damaged and you use Water Barrier beforehand, right? So she's super strong on that. And then Blessing of the Waves, generically speaking, like Mika's base kit is so strong that you can literally delete everything because having 2 powerful heals is enough to make her good. And when we go lower in the tier list and we see Nia up there, I think my Nia is probably not built enough properly, which is why I think she's worse. But just even considering like the base kit outside of the basic cards, Mika has like really powerful healing that only gets better besides the finale, which again you don't have to click if you don't want to. Tech Analysis is probably the weakest card she has, but one weak card is not even that bad because it provides really strong burst healing. Sometimes when you have Deluge active, it gives you a refund. It even gives you free healing if you hit the correct epiphany. By far her weakest card, or not by far weakest card because Whirlpool is way less favored, but it is definitely like not as impressive as Blessing or Source of Water. Whirlpool obviously no one really likes. This is one of the cards that gets removed immediately from Mika if you're going for an actual build. The one cost Whirlpool is like barely okay if you're going for a real Mika deck and you want to save on save data. But otherwise, just like Water Arrow, it's all right if you're in a chaos world where you need to hit stuff down. But otherwise, like you're very safe to delete this immediately the moment you see it, and you're not really suffering for it. And then Deluge is another card that's like ironically not that great because it takes 3 turns to pay for itself for the most part. Unless you have Blessing of Waves, obviously. And very frequently, I don't even cast this if I have a attack card in hand because I'd rather get the damage in and make the run shorter as opposed to getting value 3 turns in, which might be a mistake because I play very sloppily because I always play with a really broken comp. But Deluge, but you know, it is what it is. And the other problem with Mika is that she does only have 1 unique card on Deluge, so you do have to manually delete everything through shops and events if you want to get a proper build going for somebody else. But in the end, like having even 1 unique card makes her decently better than most other characters because this is a guaranteed unique card, and a lot of characters lack even that. And then her ego skill is sometimes weak, sometimes strong, mainly because it's quite expensive. It's plus 2 AP, a lot of healing for that 1 turn for 6 ego points, which can be really pricey, but some characters really value that. And if you're just trying to, if you have like capped out ego points and you're just trying to heal because you're really low, even this card is fine. And you don't even need, I think the second dupe of Mika is quite good. This heal for 200% when you take stress. This is definitely what makes her even better in Chaos because a lot of the time you have a 1 in 3 chance of Mika getting stress, and healing 200% keeps you topped off a lot. And so if you ever see Mika like mostly max out on stress and you've taken a lot of damage over time in the Chaos Dungeon, that means Mika has healed you for thousands of HP for free, just automatically, which is why, again, Mika is so powerful in Chaos Dungeons. Now, going a tier lower, Khalipe is a character that probably should be above along with Veronica and Mika, and if you were at the start of the game, many people were hounding others to like reroll for Khalipe because Khalipe was that good. Khalipe was so broken early, and I didn't pull her until recently, and I didn't really use her. My original account had her, but I didn't play her then either. And I'll just have to say that like early on, I think maybe with way worse base stats, Khalipe was genuinely that powerful. But when I play her now, she's just like all right. And again, I'm mostly basing this off of like the hype that she had originally, and a lot of people did tell me that she was genuinely that good. But once again, like she hasn't impressed me at all, and that's more probably because my Khalipe is not properly built. And maybe if I super built her, she might be able to take the role of Veronica, but I really doubt it just from playing her the very few times I have. Because even when Veronica was weak, she was pumping damage and getting value, and Khalipe, while she's weak, isn't really doing that great. So Khalipe's kit, her base attacks change a little bit compared to Veronica and Mika. She has a 1 cost and a 2 cost damage card. The 2 cost looks pretty bad at base, but it does upgrade itself and gives AoE when you get potential 3, which is very cheap. So this is actually a 2 mana AoE 180% defense base damage card, which does trigger her Vulture Rejection due to the Celestial trait. And then Seer's Vow is just a generic shield card, which is quite nice. Now Khalipe as well starts with her best card possible in Vulture Rejection. This card does pitiful damage because it's only 100% skill damage. It tickles when it's unepiphanied, but it's still a lot of shield. It is basically free essentially because you're using 2 costs to pull it out, and therefore it's really hard to hate. And the only issue is that, like, again, you have to stack 3 Silver Veil, and Silver Veil itself pumps, but you have to get 3 of it somehow. So if you're in a Chaos run and you're taking it really slow, then odds are you probably will get the 3 Silver Veil eventually with only 1 copy of Vulture Rejection. But in order to get Silver Veil quickly, you do need to get dupes, which then requires some RNG, and neither Veronica nor Mika require dupes ever, or even require you to hit the correct epiphanies ever to feel that great, while Khalipe high key does. Greatsword Aquila is very alright. It's another Vulture Rejection card, but it again doesn't do much damage at base, and then when you epiphany it, all the epiphanies are very okay in my opinion, and I'm not really impressed by any of them. They never really did much damage, which is again probably more of my fault for not building and investing into Khalipe, but it's hard for me to really justify playing her if she's not powerful like that. Like, I'm not replacing either Veronica or Mika even if she is doing way more damage, because Veronica is like has all of her unique cards, and Mika having healing and stress reduction is way more important than dealing more damage when Veronica is already carrying so hard. Overpower, I think it's a pretty useless card. It's a massive shield, but the issue is that not every mob in Chaos will always be attacking, and the benefits of Overpower, once again, triggers Vulture Rejection, so it's fine in that regard, but without doing damage, it's a really mixed card for me. Like, this is the card that I would always want to delete, just for more consistency and draw, so I could get that Vulture Rejection more frequently. And Overpower, like, again, it's probably fine. Like, you can get break pretty easily with Tenacity damage. You do get a lot of shield. but in the end, I value damage and healing more than like a temporary shield that might not even be able to be played properly. Rally is pretty decent. 1 mana, get a shield, draw, Vulture Projection almost guaranteed. Basically across all of the versions, that's not bad, right? I think the only ones that drop the Vulture Projection tutor is the bottommost Rally, but everything else will almost always essentially get Vulture Projection, and so this card's quite good, even without the upgrade, but you do need to hit the Epiphany for it, which I didn't really give a demerit for Veronica for, but yeah, this makes your deck a lot more consistent, so it's just a good card. And then Absolute Protection is, I've heard this card is good, but when I played, it didn't really feel that great because Veronica obviously doesn't need Absolute Protection, and Mika's cards aren't really that high quality. So I'm assuming this is more of like a team comp diff than it is a Khalipe issue. But essentially, getting a fat shield based off all of your remaining mana and keeping your hand could be very good, especially if you're playing Khalipe and you want to like keep certain cards like maybe Rally, so that you can like draw your extra Vulture Ejections on the next turn immediately, or even just like playing Absolute Protection, destroying your Vulture Ejection, and then having Rally kept in hand so you can immediately pull back Vulture Ejection from your discard pile, which is probably the main reason. So she's alright, but she is a bit weaker because she does have some weaker cards overall, and she didn't feel that powerful to me. Now, Yuki might be a hot take. Yuki might be a character that's really dependent on the Chaos world, because I played her in Lab 0, and she felt totally fine in Lab 0. There might be like single target content, like I don't know what world she'd be bad in, but I'm sure there's a world that she is genuinely bad at. But she is one of the most consistent AoE characters. She unfortunately does need to hit the Epiphanies quite early because her base cards are genuinely trash. Her basic first and her basics like okay, so she gets potentials where she gets inspiration effects to the basics. The 1 mana card is alright because it's 0 cost if you draw it, but a 2 mana card just gets more damage, which is really useless because it's really expensive and not better than most of her other cards to begin with. And her shield is a shield. So Yuki is a character whose Epiphany cards are all very good, but her base set is very bad. So if you don't hit a lot of Epiphanies early on Yuki, she won't feel great. But if you hit everything, like once again, much like Veronica, like you almost can't miss with her Epiphanies. Prepare to Subdue only has one truly bad version, which is decreasing your damage amount when you draw. Everything else is either a tutor that gives you really good damage, or it carries over to the next stage and gives you more consistent draw and more consistent AoE. Because remember that this is something that will mandatorily trigger inspiration, so that you aren't eating a full cost inspiration card later on. Flash Slash, very similarly, like there is almost no way to miss on Flash Slash, at least for chaos reasons. These bottom two or bottom right two are probably the closest to being truly bad, and the bottom left one is not that great because it's still pretty expensive. But for the purpose of clearing chaos, it is still pretty good. Like it's 360 damage for 2 mana. That is very strong for mana efficiency. But unfortunately, like these top two are much better. Like doing 270 for 1 cost is just more mana efficiency than doing 360 for 2 mana, and then obviously doing 180 for free is a lot better than everything else. But then Flash Slash itself can also get generic Epiphany, so you can deal agonies to everything. You get morale, you can get draw, you can do whatever. Like even the base Epiphany is very good with all other Epiphanies. And then again, with only 2 true misses, it's basically impossible to miss on Yuki's Flash Slash. Trickery Strike, basically the same thing. Obviously, outside of Chaos, you have a lot more draw power, so having Activate Inspiration in hand is a lot weaker. But otherwise, like exact same idea. You have one truly terrible card, which is the skill version, where you activate Inspiration for all cards, and then everything else is at least usable, because either it helps you fix a Inspiration not being procced, or it's free, or it draws, right? That's just really good. Same Freezing Blade is something that like has a really bad Epiphany. Like in my opinion, the top right is not that good because the damage is really low. So Freezing Blade does have a few misses. Like top right is really weak, bottom right is really bad, middle bottom is also pretty whatever because of you'd rather just do more damage. Like with the extra proc because of the morale, and also the ratio on the proper Freezing Blades are quite good. Bottom left can be pretty bad if you're trying to go for AoE things, but 130 to a random enemy is still reasonably okay. And then the top middle is by far the best version because you get a lot more damage. Now top left can get morale. Getting morale is theoretically much better than the top middle actually, but it's not that consistent of fine +1 morale for Freezing Blade upgrade, so that's why I don't really want to call it as like the better version. And yeah, again, top right, honestly, top right's not even that bad, but it's just very noticeable when you're fighting units with Fortitude. Doing 0 with Freezing Blade with the top right version is very common. And then Iceberg Cleave is literally one of the best AoE cards in the game, even with the demerit of decreasing damage amount by 20%. This does so much damage, even just like as the first card you get. And while I don't recommend duping it, I mean you could even dupe it in Chaos if you really just want to finish the run because of how efficient the damage is. Literally nothing else in the game besides like Vulture Ejection with like Silver Veil proccing comes close to matching Iceberg Cleave, and Iceberg Cleave, like even if you don't draw it, 180% for 1 mana is very good. Like even Flash Slash can't match that because if we're being honest, like if we're assuming that you don't hit the inspiration, then all of Flash Slash's things are worse value than Iceberg Cleave. So yeah, Yuki is very powerful in that regard. Mei Lin is a character that I think people think should be in super strong tier, but I think she does actually require not only a bit of care, but also does require correct epiphanies. So the very first issue with Mei Lin is that she has a shield card. Her strikes will always do a ton of damage because you'll always be building Mei Lin with very basic attack oriented builds, even in chaos mode. And all of her cards are quite decent. She starts with an okay card. Like honestly, this card is very whatever, even for chaos. It gives her a good amount of damage, but in the end, like you're spending 1 mana to buff later cards when what you really want to be doing is hitting your enemies immediately to get the damage rolling. Now, obviously, Flame Dragon Jewel can stack up damage very quickly, but when you think about the pace of a game or like pace of draw, if you cast Flame Dragon Jewel, there's a really good chance that you don't draw Mei Lin's cards for like the next turn, so it's already losing value, and you could have cast like an actual attack card. Like if let's say that you're playing Veronica, Mei Lin, right? Veronica Mei Lin, like if you get Firing Prep, Pendant of Resolution, and then Flame Jewel Dragon and 2 strikes, like 2 Mei Lin strikes, odds are that your run will be much smoother if you play Firing Preparation and then both of Mei Lin strikes, right? Because that's a lot more damage early on. But because of Flame Dragon Jewel, you might make the misplay and you might be tempted to play this card instead when you're already discarding most of Mei Lin's good damage cards and all that. So that's why I'm not really a big fan. Obviously, it's totally fine to not even play it, and it's a new card, so it's good for deck building, but it's just not as good as it might seem at the very get-go. Now, Rising Dragonspire is a really funny card because this card is considered one of the most massive bricks for Mei Lin, but if you're being honest, for Chaos runs alone, this card has no bad options if you're running her with Veronica, because on bottom left, next passion card used 1 extra hit, this will double Veronica's ballistas, and as we all know, Veronica's ballistas pump massive damage. Everything else is just really good damage efficiency. Like top left is 200% for 1 mana and 2 Ember, that's pretty good. Middle top is 300% for 1 mana, pretty powerful. Top right, exact same thing, 300% damage for 1 mana. And then bottom middle is giving your base attack damage or base attack card even more damage. And as we all know, since you're pumping your basics by so much damage, that will make up for the 1 mana 100% like currently being played. Now, obviously, bottom right is by far the most problematic and powerful version for Mei Lin, giving her +1 hit per passion card played that turn. And the reason why people don't like this card very much is because everyone chases this bottom right version. But once again, if you're just trying to get through chaos, that's totally fine. Like you can take anything on Rising Dragonspire and it'll serve you very well. Now, Unity and Attack or Defense is actually the main reason why I don't think Mei Lin belongs in like super strong tier, because she is very, very dependent on hitting this specific epiphany to start actually feeling great, which is very similar to the problem with Yuki. So obviously we have moved to basic cards being the best version because this lets you draw strike, play strike, and then immediately get it back through Unity. No other Unity, well, there's the upgrade version obviously that lets you create strikes, which is like the suboptimal version of what the move version does, but everything else requires you to pull without having strike already in hand. Like you cannot play a strike and then play any of these other draw basic cards to get strike back. And on top of that, you have to delete Flame Dragon Guardian in order to make her feel truly great in Chaos, because otherwise you might accidentally pull the shield instead of the attack, which will literally have your damage from playing Unity Attack and Defense. So because of all these minor nuances with Mei Lin, that's why she drops from being potentially super strong down to strong or very good, because she needs like some care, right? And if you get the, like once you have all the epiphanies and once you delete the shield card, she is definitely in super strong, but the issue is that she doesn't start that way. Spirit of Aromata is definitely her weakest card. Sadly, it doesn't even come with unique, so you can't even make it like a good deck thinner. This card is alright. Like again, outside of Chaos, this card is very good because you can stack it up very powerfully, then you get the Giga Kick from Rising Dragonspire from it. But in Chaos, very similar issue to her original upgrade card. Spending 1 mana for this when you would rather just punch something or have a better card is really bad feeling. And obviously you can play this card very frequently because there are times where you have nothing better to do than play Spirit of the Armada, and that's totally fine. But again, there are like Mika and Veronica, most of their cards you're like happy to play, and Spirit of Armada very often is like, oh, I might as well just play because they need cards to play. And then Flame Dragon Sovereign, I think that's the name, is a card that's like honestly not that great. It does a ton of damage to be fair, 300%. With E1 you get a guaranteed crit. It's ironic because if you look at Flame Dragon Sovereign and then Rising Dragon Spire, any of the Epiphanies, this is just a 1 mana version of Flame Dragon Sovereign, and that's the reason why it's not a great card. But on the bright side, it if you break with it, you do keep Embers, so it does kind of inflate the damage given from Flame Dragon Sovereign, because you Embers, if you don't know, is a mechanic where like if you once you like hit or put something into Ravage, you do more damage based on how many Embers you stacked, which is a debuff that you inflict from Flame Dragon's Jewel and from the lesser appreciated versions of Rising Dragon Spire. And so if you manage to pop someone with like 5 Embers, you're adding 150% damage on the next card, which is why Flame Dragon Sovereign is 2 mana. Now, the other issue with Mei Lin is that her ego skill is very bad. I mean, it's not very bad, but it's very whatever. In boss fights, it's quite good because you're guaranteed to get to the point where you play all the basics to get the damage out. But if you're going for like short fights, or if you're going for immediate pop, that means you have to have basics in your hand from Mei Lin. And again, when you compare it to someone like Veronica, who will always have ballistas, minus like very rare instances where the monsters will discard it for you, it's just very bad. Like it's 6 ego, so it's not even cheap to play, and you need to have basics. Like it's just very conditional compared to the way better egos that are out there. Haru is a character that I've been playing with only recently, and so I'm not sure what her true low rolls are, but she feels quite decent to me. Similar thing with Yuki, where her basics aren't even that good, but like I guess yeah, with it's the same as Yuki. Like her basics aren't that good, but they're serviceable, so like you don't really care. You do end up needing to get the epiphanies with Anchor Pointer, but unlike Yuki, you do get access to one of her best cards immediately. Prepare Subdue for Yuki it's fine because of the self draw, but it's not like your main card. Whereas Anchor Shot is like really nice to have early on because it is a decent amount of damage to start out with, and the moment you get Anchor Pointer, that allows you to start like throwing damage out. Now, I think I might be overrating Haru because the more I look at her damage numbers and the more like I remember some of my runs, I think she is honestly like she is strong because she doesn't need epiphanies, if that makes sense, but her numbers are honestly kind of low. Like I think this might just be like the Haru like the person that wants to be Haru to be a little stronger in me talking, but I feel like her damage numbers are genuinely quite bad because they're too focused around the fact that it scales. So like while Anchor Shot is totally fine as a base card, you will feel the lack of damage in certain boss fights where she doesn't have weakness. So like in Lab Zero, for example, in longer boss fights where the boss recovers all of HP and you don't draw into like water, like source of water, and you can only cast Anchor Shot once, like you can tell that her damage output isn't as impressive as it could be. Anchor Pointer obviously is a really good card. There's only one truly bad Anchor Pointer version that might not even be that bad. This retrieves all Anchor Shots, and it's only bad because that means you have to have Anchor Shot already in hand, whereas every single other Anchor Shot version allows you to pull it out from your graveyard, your discard pile, or your deck in order to play it immediately. So yeah, one miss is not bad for Chaos runs. Power Charge is another version of a card that like probably could use with slightly higher numbers if we're being honest, but the damage amount is honestly quite good. And just having another 2 mana AoE hit is decent for trash fights in Chaos and probably good in AoE fights for certain boss fights. But when you're attacking like one mob, this often is a card that you don't play when you have to decide between Anchor Shot and Power Charge. It's definitely alright, like it has its purpose. It's definitely a good amount of damage, but it's definitely very lackluster, especially outside of Chaos. And then Charge Energy, ironically, is a card that I always pick to play because, again, much like Mei Lin's buff cards, the buffs aren't really that impressive compared to just pumping another attack card from somebody else and dealing that extra damage. Now, that might just be me being bad at math because, obviously, if you have like this bottom left one, which can buff Anchor Shot by a lot, if you have a lot of attack cards or a lot of cards from Haru in hand, like this could just be way better. And most of these other ones like are just decent, like high value things like 30%, 40%, 50%, 30%. Like these are all very good, and this upgrade is a unique card. So again, very good for deck bending. Like these are all very decent cards. It's just my skill issue. I don't really appreciate this card as much as I could, but looking at the numbers, look at the effects, I can tell that these are good cards even for Chaos. And then Lift Anchor is a card that's definitely all right. Like it's definitely like a finishing card where you have nothing better to do. You play lift anchor into anchor shot. This is definitely one of the weakest cards of her kit though, if not the weakest card, just because very frequently like you'd rather again use a basic attack, use another draw spell, do anything but make anchor shot more expensive to do like moderately more damage. Now, does it have its uses? Yes. Do I personally wish it didn't exist in her deck? Yes. And that's one of the main reasons why. Like her somewhat lackluster overall damage because her numbers feel a bit low, as well as some dead cards existing, is why Haru is not in the super strong tier, but it's still quite good for what she does. Now, Hugo is another character that, again, might belong in the super strong tier. The only reason why I'm not putting him up there is because I'm trying to be responsible. I haven't played him personally, but I've seen nothing but praise for Hugo. Now, his cards are all very decent. If we see, I don't think his basics ever get upgraded, so that's like one. Oh no, there is one. Yeah, you get once the hunt for playing Throw Dagger, so that makes the basics honestly quite decent because you can play Throw Dagger, proc Commence the Hunt, and then throw another dagger, and then you proc your own Commence the Hunt, and that's obviously a lot of damage for Hugo. Shield is always there, and you do start with Hugo's best card along with the most important tag called Initiation. Unlike Mei Lin's version, like getting this early is really important because that means if you're playing the other initiation cards, like for example, you're playing Hugo Veronica, if you play this first and then play Firing Prep, you do immediately get the Commence the Hunt. So you're automatically and immediately getting value from Hunting Instincts for playing it immediately. Now, the main issue with Hunting Instincts is the fact that there are many Epiphany versions where it drops it. So you only have two possible outcomes where you keep Initiation, and every single other version of Hunting Instincts drops Initiation, which is why a lot of people are very frequently unhappy with how they balance this card. So ironically enough, this is one of the few cards that you'd rather not see the Initiation for or the Epiphany for early on in the run, because you might lose a lot of power because you hit one of the bad Epiphanies for Hunting Instincts. So that is actually the sole reason why I put him not in super strong, despite knowing that people glaze him a lot, because of the fact that you can just miss and then his power level like falls a notable amount for missing Initiation. Now, Fan of Daggers is quite decent. It's just a lot of damage that comes with Commence the Hunt. And obviously, you can't rely on duping Hunting Instincts in a generic Chaos run, so having more access to Commence the Hunt is just good for your overall damage output for Hugo. Quick Fix is just a very decent draw card that comes with a good amount of damage. You can't really be mad about this. Like, this is just good overall. 3 ways to draw, or it's a ton of damage, or I think this bottom middle one is the worst one because you don't really care about increased action count, but it comes with 180% damage, so that's the reason why like that's also good. And then top right, double damage, like triple damage, 240% and comes to hunt state. Like once again, even though it loses some utility and isn't slapping as hard as the bottom right quick fix can, it's still very good mana efficiency for what it does. Dingo Howling, probably the weakest card. This is definitely the one I appreciate the least. I mean, obviously getting more Commence the Hunt is totally fine because again, if you miss the correct Epiphany on Hunting Instinct, you do need to Commence the Hunt. So it's a good stopper for like totally bricking your draws for Hugo. But the only ones I'm really appreciative of is the bottom left, which lets you draw one extra attack card per turn when you gain Commence the Hunt, which is going to be every turn, basically. It's like one per turn. Or the bottom right, where you can just draw 2 attack cards straight up, which is obviously a very good cycle for 1 mana. So, and then the bottom right, Fixed Approaches, is a very good, like, again, unique, so it helps you thin your deck, and it lets you thin your duplication pool, and also just gives you a lot more damage on Commence the Hunt. Like, 40% more damage is just really good. And yeah, basically very similar to Veronica. Like I think Hugo and Veronica are basically would be on the same tier of power if this Hunting Instinct didn't grief you. I think that's really the reason why I put Hugo lower than Veronica. Like if this was like Firing Prep and every single version had Initiation, I would have no reason to rate Hugo lower. But because there is that genuine massive inconsistency for Hugo, it knocks it down a peg, unfortunately. Now, Maribell is actually in the strong tier, ironically. Like, I've played Maribell a lot, and my Maribell runs, when I pair her with, like, Mika, Veronica, have genuinely never felt bad. Like, even when I'm rolling really poorly on draws, even when I'm not hitting Epiphanies, Maribell, like, certain characters, I'll, like, end the run, and, like, it'll just, like, implode and go really poorly. But because Maribell has shield, because she has so much defense, because she has so much counterattack, almost no card you draw from Maribell is a miss, at least in the context for Chaos. So, first of all, her basics very generic. The 2 mana shields on hold is not that great in my opinion, but just because much like Khalipe's shield cards, like it's too expensive for doing nothing. And then her top right card is just good damage along with counterattack, which is just more damage for Maribell. And then once again, none of these epiphanies are misses at all. You either get more counterattack. I mean, you always get more counter. You either get more counterattack or you do way more damage with the spell. Now this middle bottom one is not that great unless you already have shield active. So this is like one of the worst ones. It's better outside chaos. Probably one of the better ones. Yeah, probably one of the better ones outside chaos. So you could take it anyways. But everything else does outshine it a little bit because very often the shield you have on you isn't empowering this card that much. But everything else is just quite decent. Like this bottom left one also is kind of mid. But having 2 mid options out of like 4 pretty good ones is again more than enough for me to rate this card as pretty good in chaos. Maribell Shelter, I think it's like MK2 or whatever it's called. Just again, very decent damage. Also gives you a fat shield. So unlike like Overpower from Khalipe, unlike her like other shield cards, this still does damage. So even if you aren't getting shield value, you're still dealing at least some damage with this card. Like even like there is no version of this card where you don't deal damage, and even though damage might not be that much, you're still making progress towards killing the boss or ending the run. Wolf's Dome is probably the weaker card, but since most of them are upgrades, it's fine because it's like play it once and then forget it. Giving counterattack means that it will still technically do damage in the long run because obviously your enemies will eventually attack you, which will eventually trigger counterattack. Now, again, if your opponent doesn't attack you, much like shield value, there's no real value immediately, so sometimes you'll take a little bit extra stress from the turn end effect than you'd like to due to having Wolf's Dome. But again, since most of the time things are attacking you, and since counterattack does linger between turns, unlike shield does without retain, you will get value from this eventually, so it's always going to be fine. This bottommost one is literally the only truly bad epiphany for Wolf's Dome. It might have some uses outside of chaos, but like one actual brick. It's not even like actual brick because the only thing it does is that it takes up 1 draw because 0 mana still gives you counterattack, so it's not even that bad to draw. It's just the fact that it's like it's not permanent, it's not an upgrade. OIC is gonna be again one of the this is actually probably the weakest card. Again, it does get counterattack, so it will give you value eventually, unlike Khalipe's Overpower, unlike some other basic shield cards. And it does give weaken, which is it's permanent value for taking less damage, right? So it's another way of Maribell keeping true to her tanking nature, where she just makes you very sturdy. And the reason why, like, even if you aren't killing the boss really quickly, you aren't really dying as fast as you could otherwise be if you're running a real DPS. Now, these bottom right 2 epiphanies, this bottom middle one is definitely better outside chaos than inside chaos. And I think it's, if you want to just clear the run, you probably don't want to take this, but this is technically probably her best version outside of chaos. It's up to the jury still on this one, but the bottom right one is definitely much safer because it's just again permanent shield. It's an upgrade to unique, thins out your replicate pool, and obviously when it comes down to getting fixed shield, you'll almost always have counterattack stacks on Maribell, so you'll almost always have some free shield for fun. Which again, shield does burn out at the end of the turn, which is why this isn't like super good, but the fact that's happening automatically because it's an upgrade means that you don't care as much for losing some shield value. And yeah, Shelter Strike is just a card that's better outside chaos than inside chaos, but odds are you will have shield, so it will at least do some minor damage. Obviously, if you aren't able to stack a lot of shield to proc Shelter Strike, it feels really bad. I very often use this as a 0 damage card just because I have nothing better to do, and that sucks, and that's why this isn't like super good. And that's also the reason why Maribell isn't in like super strong or even considered to be in super strong, because she doesn't do a lot of damage, but she does mitigate. She does mitigate a lot. She does shield a lot. She does deal good damage despite all of her, besides her role and all that. And yeah, Maribell I think is very underrated. Selena is a character I haven't played, but I've been told very frequently that she is very good in chaos, so that's why she's up here. My main assumptions for why she's really good is because she either, like all of her cards do something decent. Getting Mark just means that you're investing in future damage that you can get very quickly. You're either getting 4 Mark for 1 mana, or you're getting much more damage for Mark for 1 mana, or you're getting a lot of attacks for 0 mana. Like there's almost no way that having more attacks from Selena is going to be bad, right? So this is just obviously a good card. Target Spotted, I think Target Spotted is probably the card that like has the most whining about it because it does Epiphany to some pretty bad options. Attunement as an effect, I think should trigger at turn start. I'm not really sure, but having 1 mark automatically or having 200% damage automatically is quite good. And then obviously if you're hitting a mark unit, giving more mark for 1 mana is really good. Now these this bottom left and bottom right versions are pretty iffy, and the bottom middle is pretty fine in my opinion, just because a draw 1 that replaces itself will always be good. So once again, like 2 out of the 6 options, being bad is not good enough to make the card bad. Drone bombing is another card that's like, I think is like pretty decent. The damage is not impressive. Like passion weakness is also not that impressive, especially since it forces you to run like passion units to get the value out of it. But there are some okay cards here, like 0 mana, deal good damage. Honestly, this is like probably the most generic version because it's just good damage overall. This bottom middle version requires you to tune your team to the chaos, which probably is pretty easy. And then this top right one is honestly like, okay, I think the top right one is actually the best one because you probably can play a Selena card and then play this to get the mark pretty easily. So yeah, again, this card is also very good. And then tactical maneuver. Oh, this is a card that seemed very mid. It's just a lot of shield tenacity damage, like getting break. I mean, obviously break is quite good, but since almost all of the ones that do tenacity damage are costing 1 mana, so at best you can treat this as like a shield yourself, or with this one tack maneuver deal some damage and then refund the cost, which is not bad, but you aren't always gonna immediately break your opponent with this cast. So this is kind of mid, and yeah, I'm not impressed by tack maneuver at all. And Sniper's Domain, 0 mana. Can't be mad about that. It has unique, again, takes itself out of the dupe card, and having more mark damage on a character that has a lot of mark is very good. I know I didn't talk about ego skills recently, but if I don't talk about the ego skill, then just assume it's not that great. I do think that Selena's is on the better end because it's not only cheap, giving mark is a lot extra damage. So 5 ego skill for like the equivalent of, at least at 0 dupes, like 600% damage is very, very, very good for an SR character and even for the game. But obviously Selena doesn't really pump super hard, so that's why I have her at good and not super strong. But you know, I've heard too many good things about her to really put her lower. And then Ray is going to be the final character for the strong tier. Ray is the usual replacement for Mika. I think Ray, as someone who's played her a few times, not very that often, she does feel noticeably less consistent than Mika does, because unfortunately with Ray, you are on a damage race, and that means if you take a lot of damage at once, Ray will never be able to turbo heal you like Mika does. Like when I play Mika, even if I only have Water Barrier and Source, I can heal a lot, mainly because of this Manifest Ego and like being very accessible. Ray, on the other hand, doesn't really come with that raw healing power. Not only does she lack a healing basic, her singular healing card not only can lose the healing on certain epiphanies, but it's also an exhaust card, so you can't even get massive healing from that. So just as like, obviously she has a ego where when you like, she's very cheap. Like you obviously get 1 dupe for her for free at the start of the game, so getting second dupe is not particularly difficult, but healing for 120% is not that powerful. Again, when you consider the fact that Mika can trigger her healing, like, or rather Mika's heal just triggers like for a way higher amount and also has more base healing in her kit. So what is Ray meant to do? Ray's meant to kill, right? That is what she's meant to do, and she does a lot towards that. Like having 2 Dark Blades with a potential that gives you higher percent chance to crit on them, like that is generally not bad. Like Ray's basics do chunk, and obviously, as I keep mentioning, doing damage is always really nice in a chaos run. Strike of Darkness can be 1 or can be 0 mana when you get it for free, so she's even starting with a very decent card. And obviously, because you're starting the game or you're just like getting early into run, the fact that it comes with a basic attack card buff is actually very, very relevant, because odds are you'll be using your basics for the vast majority of the beginning of your chaos run. And then when in Epiphanies, that's when Strike of Darkness starts to fall off a little bit, because not only will you not be playing as many basics overall, but the versions of Strike of Darkness are just not that great. Like top right, Ray is not your DPS, so she won't be built very powerfully, and then you decrease your damage amount by 20% for 1 turn. Like I actually have never taken this, so I don't know if it's a team-wide debuff, but if it is a team-wide debuff, then you don't want this at all, right? And then every other thing, like bottom left is actually okay, because again, you're probably not playing your basic cards ever in a chaos run, so this ends up just being like a very high upside, especially if you have some draw cards in your character, so you actually have a bigger hand. This ends up being decent, but it's not like really that powerful. Bottom middle, unique upgrade, again, unique, like a unique card, normal duplication, clutter, upgrade, play it once, forget about it. And then bottom right, a retain card with activate all basic cards in hand is definitely okay, especially in chaos, because you're cheating out a lot of mana depending on how many basic cards you have. But it's just not, it's not super impressive, but it's very good for the purpose of just like clearing chaos without having to remove all of your basic cards in general. The only problem I have with these Strike of Darknesses is that it assumes you have a lot of draw power. The issue with raised draw power, again, is that it's temporary. So that means you have to have another character that has a lot of draw. So if you don't have a lot of draw, then the value of both of these Strike of Darknesses falls off quite hard, because odds are you're going to play those basic cards anyways. So therefore, the value of cheating them out in some way and getting other value from them is a lot lower than you might expect otherwise. Now, the first unique card for Ray is Resonating Darkness. Obviously, you'll be tuning your character according to playing Ray. So every one of these has a good upside. There's only one card that is truly kind of bad if you're not tuning your deck properly or your team properly, and that's gonna be like the top right with Void. But for the most part, like it's only one bad option, right? Like even this top middle one, which is potentially like a bit like very like, oh yeah, the top middle and the bottom right, like these are all somewhat variants. But if you just play with her with Void, you only have two bad options, and these two bad options aren't even truly bad if your characters have these one costs, right? So like none of these are bad. All of them except for the bottom right have unique and are upgrades. So once again, delete itself from your deck, can't be chosen for replication, so it's very, very strong, and it does give very relevant damage buffs. Snack Time as a card is really powerful, but the issue is that it's exhaust. If this card was I guess like more flexible with the choose one in hand to exhaust, like if this is more flexible and as well as like it didn't exhaust itself, like let's say instead of saying you have to exhaust, you can just like exhaust nothing. I think only bottom left. I think, yeah, oh no, these two versions allow you to not exhaust anything, but everything else that doesn't say choose up to forces you to exhaust. And because of that, I mean, obviously you do want to exhaust basic, so it's fine, but it's just like the fact that it exhausts itself, so it's temporary, the fact that it's like one of your temporary heal cards, and also the heal gets deleted depending on the epiphany you take, and yeah, it's a really good card outside chaos, because you get to take less efficient decks outside chaos and then make them efficient by exhausting them with Ray. But once again, like you don't get the draw. Since a lot of chaos runs are very short, this is very good in chaos for the most part, but it's just draw cards, right? Like Veronica does this, but more efficiently for the most part. But I mean, having access to this can't be bad. So yeah, it's a good card in chaos. And then Dark Condensation is another card that's just very good for buffing. Every one of these versions gives you a massive buff to one card. Almost nothing in the game comes close to this ease of access to 1 mana plus at least 100% damage amount, because this is essentially plus 5 morale to one card, and again, not much beats that, if anything. So this is just a very good card overall, like especially in chaos. Now, bottom left does have like the Void marker, and bottom right does have a lot of anti-synergy, or rather lack of synergy, with temporary cards and generated cards. But for the most part, everything else is just really high quality for doing more damage, and you cannot say that this is a bad card. And then arguably her best card, ironically, is her Mythic card, which does sadly mean it can't be Epiphanied. But Predator's Blade, one turn, gain 4 morale, just means that everything else you do in that turn is plus 80% damage amount. That is incredible. So yeah, you can see why Ray is the de facto default replacement for Mika. She is not quite as strong as Mika, because people that are playing Ray have a lot less consistency with completing runs, but she's like so good that she is she's good enough to replace her for the most part, right? She's just not making the game super easy like Mika does. So going further down the line, we have Requires Epiphany. I'll probably keep this a bit shorter because I know it's a video going a bit long, because I'm like talking super in depth about each character. But Chizuru does, unfortunately, she does need the Epiphanies, ironically enough, because if you know the purpose of her kit, which is to get Shadow of the Moon, it's actually really hard to charge Shadow of the Moon without a dedicated team for her. And therefore that means that like you do have to get you do have to end up either playing around her or piggybacking her off of the really OP duo of Mika, Veronica. And so what ends up happening is that not only does she require you to get the Epiphanies to even get started, she then requires you to get good Epiphanies to make her feel really good to play. So those Epiphanies being like bottom left Tsukuyomi, even maybe top right Tsukuyomi, even, and for me personally, bottom right Tsukuyomi, like these are the Tsukuyomis I want to hit. But that means half of the Epiphanies are not that good. And even the bottom left version is not that applicable for the most part, because sometimes you might even get to play Shadow of the Moon if you don't get the Shadow of the Moon Mythic upgrade and you draw the buff too early, right? Bound at Dusk is definitely very okay in Chaos, Again, this is more of a skill issue on my end because I'm always playing her with Mika, Veronica, so I actually don't want to play this card because it conflicts directly with Mika. I will occasionally still play it because I can tell Mika won't be as valuable, but if you're running Chizuru, Rei, +1, then Bound Not Dusk becomes much better. Now, the thing is that I did try playing Chizuru, Rei, Veronica when I first pulled Chizuru, and that's the reason why I say Rei is like not as good as Mika is, because I was losing a lot more runs with Chizuru, Rei, Veronica because my Chizuru wouldn't get her epiphanies in time, and then I'd take a lot of damage because I can't kill the boss in time, which meant that Rei, her main defect of not having really strong burst healing, showed up too often, and that's the reason why Chizuru to me is like not actually super powerful at all in Chaos because she has too many things that need to be done. And she even has a super dead card in Bound at Dusk because once I swapped Rei for Mika again, my runs got a lot smoother, a lot more stable, and I couldn't even play Bound at Dusk anymore because it's just not good, right? So I think this card's really bad, but obviously being unique, it's good for duplication efficiency, but the fact you don't even want to cast this with what might be your quote-unquote most consistent Chaos team, aka plus Mika, the most broken character in Chaos, means that like I don't like this card at all. Like I don't even want to see this on Epiphany because it burns a opening hand slot. Oni Hunt is another card that's like definitely very good for the most part. This bottom right and bottom left Oni Hunt Epiphanies are probably the worst ones by a decent amount. Bottom right is good for thinning your deck, but once again, Chizuru is not actually that strong. So if you are taking out one of her best damage cards, you will notice it, and you might literally lose the run because now you're going to be running Veronica solo carry, which is a really big issue. I actually did that a lot when I was trying to get a Veronica deck because I'd be like, oh, I want to make my deck thinner. I'm going to take the unique upgrade, and then just die to raw damage output because I didn't have any. And then bottom left, it's just this is bugged. This top left one should be 60 times 3, top middle should be 50 times 4. Top right is correct in being a single version, and then bottom left should be 60 times 3. The issue is that you very often have attack cards in your hand, and obviously, if you're not running Veronica, you will have scenarios where this is okay. But the fact of the matter is that top left, middle, or yeah, top left, top middle, top right are all going to be very competitive with whatever the upgraded version of this Oni Hunt can do while giving you more benefits. And obviously, this Oni Hunt, once again, comes down to the fact that it is kind of hard to get value out of Shadow of the Moon. Shadow of the Moon is very often not actually that good of a card, but it's still giving you some extra value, and the card itself does do very good damage for its cost. Now, Shadow of the Moon, unfortunately, is a pretty bad card, especially if you're omitting Shadow or Bound at Dusk. For 1 mana, it's getting plus 20% per bind stack, which is genuinely not good. But like bind 2, it's 70% times 1, which is literally severely underrated. And then if you get bind 3, you're getting 70 times 2, which is actually like barely on par with Moonslash, which is very sad. Now, obviously, that's why you have Tsukuyomi with plus hit. That's why you have Oni Hunt with more damage. But all of these are mainly just making Shadow of the Moon like barely playable. So Chizuru, with all that aside, like she's very fun to play. She's very satisfying, hitting a lot. Her animations are beautiful. All of us are very cool, but she's just not that powerful. But she is definitely good. Like she's required some epiphanies. And again, when you're playing her with correct teams, like it's like this core, and even like with Rei, like these characters, like super strong characters and strong characters, are genuinely powerful enough that you can play weaker quote unquote characters and still feel fine. That's the beauty of this game. It's just that you can tell that there's some stops missing when you're playing these characters in a suboptimal way because you're trying to chase something else. Now, Renoa is probably the poster girl of like needing epiphanies because of how her kit works. Just to skip ahead a little bit, her entire kit assumes you have dirge bullets, which when you start the game is only from Echo of Sorrow. But the issue is that with Echo of Sorrow, not only is there not an initiation besides this one epiphany, you might not draw Echo of Sorrow or the dirge bullet on time as the rest of the cards. So looking at potentials, you might be hoping that the potentials solve this by allowing you to get a basic card off of, or you might hope that the potential lets you get a Dirge Bullet from the basic card, but that sadly is not a thing. You just get more damage to Dirge Bullet, which is, again, very fine. And that just means that you're really relying on like getting good epiphanies, whether that's through Echo of Sorrow, getting more copies, or just having Flower of Devour, whatever, getting an epiphany that's actually good. So going from linearly Echo of Sorrow, all these epiphanies are quite decent. This bottom left one is definitely better outside Chaos and in Chaos, but otherwise you are pretty fine taking all of these. Just getting Dirge Bullets in general is quite good. I think bottom middle is kind of whatever because you'd rather do damage than just get more Dirge Bullets because targeted damage is really important. Keep in mind that Dirge Bullets, when they pop, do not count towards like hunger or shield procs, so you do have to actually hit them. So that's why it's Echo Sorrow, the bottom middle one, might be better outside of Chaos, but in Chaos it is a little too linear. And then bottom right, I think, is the best in Chaos because it's basically guarantees that you always have a Dirge Bullet to play or to interact with for the rest of the kit. Now, Instant Judgment is a card that is very mana efficient when you have Dirge Bullet. Otherwise, it's just like very normal for damage when you have Dirge Bullet. And the best version is probably generically in Chaos, the bottom middle one, because this actually works when you end turn. So you never have to play Instant Judgment. It will automatically trigger itself at the end of the turn and give you a lot of damage when you play it. You can even just play it manually to cheese out the extra 180 damage if you really want to, and it will still probably will still play the other thing. Maybe it won't. I actually don't know how that works. I've never done it before. Otherwise, the bottom right upgrade is quite decent. Everything else is just, once again, good damage if you have Dirge Bullet. Otherwise, very mediocre. Battle of Pitch Black, exact same idea. If you have Dirge Bullets, this card is quite decent. If you don't have Dirge Bullets, it's quite bad. Bottom or top right is quite terrible, just because, or to me, is quite terrible because it once again requires you to have Dirge Bullets and then requires you to not have them in hand. So you have to have already had played Echo of Sorrow or Flower Devoured before you draw this. And in Chaos, that means if you draw this too early, it's just a useless card and a waste of a draw. And everything else, once again, just requires you to have Dirge Bullet. Flower Devoured, Souls, whatever it's called. Most of these are pretty decent. Top middle is probably the best version. Bottom, no, yeah, I think it's just top. Like top left, top middle are by far the best ones. Top right is okay for Chaos because you can generate like 4 Dirge Bullets or 8 Dirge Bullets very easily if the rest of your hand is just other combatant things. So it's very decent for just like popping Chaos. But I think in real content, this is long term way worse than the top middle. And then everything else is like a little too whatever. Bottom left is probably good for support Renoa, but I haven't seen this used effectively in any of that. Bottom middle I've heard is decent as like a draw 3, like support Renoa is supposedly good, but to me this would require Divine Epiphany, which makes it a lot more variable, and also again it's Chaos. You probably won't have a Dirge Bullet efficiently that often. And then bottom right is just like probably okay for Chaos, but you'd rather just have the Dirge Bullets to begin with than giving it Retrieve, right? And then Last Ditch Assault, once again, you need Dirge Bullets for it to do damage. That's just full stop. So Renoa, probably a little worse than Chizuru without the full effects, but once again, like you do need epiphanies, you need to go well, and if you don't get good epiphanies, you will notice the run quality very, very fast. Amir seems like better than people would give her credit for in Chaos. I've seen Suchi play a lot, and he's my main like Amir like representative, I guess, in my mind. She comes with a lot of very much like Maribell. She comes with decent damage reduction. She comes with decent damage. The only issue is that with Amir, like she doesn't double up as efficiently as Maribel does. So you do need a team with her, it seems, to make her feel truly that good. And she does need decent epiphanies, or else she seems kind of mid. But otherwise, I think she's better than most people give her credit for. However, I honestly don't have any thoughts, so I probably won't review everything in much more detail because I think when I watch Suchi, the guy just takes like any hovering metal. Metal Pierce is like bottom left mainly. These two also decent. I think like these 4 options are all good, so that means these 2 are probably like they're okay, but you'd rather have these 4, which is again good enough. Metal Extraction seems alright. I don't really know. Like to me, this card looks pretty bad overall because you get Metallization, which both doesn't like it not only doesn't give you immediate damage, it requires you to like play other cards in the future to get damage, which is in stark contrast to like counterattack, which is automatically giving you value for free when you get hit, right? So Metallization forces you to play more mana to get more shield to proc it, which is why this is kind of bad. And then Full Metal Hurricane does have some pretty good damage output things, but it's not super powerful. And it requires Metallization to be active. And once again, Metallization requires you to use more AP on future cards. And the fact that this is 2 mana and not 0 mana means that you're very limited on how many more shields you can play that turn, which means that like a lot of these Metallization buffing effects are very mid. And then bottom right is probably the best one, but that means you have to have Metallization ahead of time before you play it. And this is honestly quite the good card, but 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 6 being good is like not good. And then Iron Skin is probably the most broken aspect of Amir's kit, and it will definitely save you a lot inside Chaos runs, but it's just like a one-time damage reduction. Like getting a massive shield is probably similar. Obviously, this will block more things more consistently than like getting like plus 30 shield, obviously. But again, you'd rather do damage and shield, which is not what's happening with Amir, unfortunately. But I mean, she seems fine. Like she seems very playable, is what I'm trying to say in the end. Beryl is going to be a character that I think should be okay, but the only issue is that like I think she really relies on having the correct opening found. Otherwise, she just seems like a very mediocre damage unit because everything like retain means that you have to stall a turn, and once again, you do want to end fights as soon as possible. So the question is the retain value actually that good? Not really, in my opinion, because that means you're delaying her redraw by one turn, and that means when you draw it again, you have to delay it again. So like none of these opening founds are particularly impressive besides bottom right. Charge shot again requires you to hold it, or you get the combo version, which is honestly quite good, but one good version out of all the bad ones is like again, not that pleasant, not that like impressed. Guilty Pleasure, much like Ray, is a one-time deal, except for this bottom middle one, so it becomes much more mid in my opinion. But otherwise, like outside Chaos, this card is pretty good overall. It's just like one-time draw 3. Obviously, it's meant to get all of your retain cards back really quickly and start retaining, but like doesn't do anything outside of that. Unlimited firepower, again, meant to buff your retain cards, which once again, if you draw your retain cards too early, and then you play unlimited fire, and then you have unlimited firepower, none of these have retain. So you're only looking at one unlimited firepower that's universally always going to be good, and everything else is like, oh, I mean, I guess it does say next attack card to you, so you can hold it, like you can play it and then hold it, so it's fine, but it's just not impressive to like stall out and take a lot of damage potentially, and get a lot of stress added to like make your next card maybe comparable to a better unit, just like one-time use card. And then Heavy Weapon Specialist is probably actually the best card for Chaos because it generates the card, it gives it -1 cost, so that means you can just pop most of them immediately for that immediate damage, and it comes back over and over again, which means that you'll always be able to play this, which is quite good. And if you have potentials, it's 0 cost, so that means you can play a 0 cost opening found or a 1 cost charge shot, which makes it very mana efficient. So this card is really good. Sadly, can't be epiphanied. Can be duplicated if you want that in your Beryl for the Chaos run itself, but otherwise like not that good outside of Chaos, obviously. Tressa, actually, you know what? Tressa probably belongs in strong. I don't know why I put her in Ricard's Epiphany. We'll just leave that in here though, because I think a lot of Tressa farming, ironically enough, actually no, I think she does belong in Ricard's Epiphany, because a lot of Tressa's farm, when you miss the upgrade version on Shadow Reload, like people almost always reset or get out as soon as possible. And I do see plenty of people getting to the end with like non-bis Tressa, but it always seems very, very rough. Like Tressa with and without Shadow Reload looks like night and day. So her original cards, like they're all okay. These get Agony when you get the Potential Awakening, which is quite decent. Unsheathed Dagger is generically okay value, but Shadow Daggers aren't that good. Like without like a lot of stacking. Curse is like not that good if you don't get to have Shadow Daggers in hand at the same time. Shadow Reload, obviously, again, has like one very, very good version. And there are some other decent versions, like Create 2 Advanced Shadow Daggers to have these 2 mana cards that punch really hard. You have like this bottom left one, which lets you just pump out Shadow Daggers if it really comes down to it. But they aren't really impressive, and therefore that's why Shadow Reload is like the card you need to hit. When you hit Shadow Reload, and then you like have like multiple of these, like you dupe them, which again is another layer of RNG that hinders her. She feels very good, but ironically enough, the main thing with Tressa, the reason why she probably feels better than she actually is for most people, is the fact that you're running her with Mika, and as we have told like ad nauseum, Mika is one of the best Chaos characters. So the fact that you can see Tressa runs struggle despite having Mika in the deck just proves how whatever she is if she doesn't roll high. And Curse Gouge, once again, you need Agony applicators to make this good. So she's just very RNG. Yeah, that's why she requires Epiphany. Like she's not really backpack because she can't pop off, but the fact she requires the Epiphanies is like, oh, okay, like that's not really that pretty. Kayron is a character I have no real input on. I've just heard that this guy struggles a lot, especially in the event chaos, ironically enough, even in like in higher difficulty. So despite having weakness advantage against most of the mobs in event chaos, although when I think about it, no. Oh yeah, the final boss does have void weakness, but I think the first boss doesn't. But I think usually people are saying that he doesn't even get past the first boss in like the higher difficulty event chaos, and then like the second boss, like he usually is fine versus, but that just proves that he needs epiphanies. Now again, obviously I don't know anything about Kayron, so this will be a very short section for him, but yeah. Like I just know that he relies on it a lot. So he's another character that like he just straight up needs like a lot of egos. Like he needs dupes and he needs potentials. And the fact that like the person that here is struggling with maxed out or like higher level difficulty in chaos, like I think that guy has maxed out dupes on Kayron. He's still doing badly, and he has the partner for Kayron, which massively buffs him, Bria. Like the fact the guy has all that and is still not like destroying chaos like easily really means that like yeah, Kayron does very much require a lot of things to go right from the feel good to play in chaos in general. And then the last three I'll talk about, like again, I have no clue about all these characters, so I don't want to talk about them. These are all like supports. Orlea, she's like supposedly supposed to be a good Mika alternative, but the issue is that Sturdy, like her stress recovery is a lot worse than Mika, because if you don't know, Sturdy's retain effect won't recover stress unless that's 33. And getting 33 is actually quite RNG for the character. So she has decent damage, she has decent utility across the board, but the issue is that she's never really going to be replacing Mika in my opinion. And I know that like some people again might be a skill issue on my end for playing mainly Mika and not understanding the nuances of Orlea, but between the two, like I can tell Orlea struggles a lot to again burst heal when it comes down to it, struggles to recover a lot of stress when it comes down to it. And again, she has a lot of utility. Like having Softy, having Swifty, like you get a lot more random hits, so you can reduce like hunger and reduce shields. That's really powerful. Softy gives a lot of characters a lot more damage. The issue is just like she has no draw. Her healing pump is very variable because you need to have Softy, then you need to have growth acceleration. Will of Light is not really good for burst healing. Growing Creature does not actually heal you at all. I guess yeah, and also Growing Creature, like you can see here that like there's like the weekend effect, but these are one-time effects. Like only the top middle version of Growing Creature is permanent. Everything else is a transform, therefore a pseudo exhaust. And like obviously there's a growth acceleration where you can decrease your stress by 5, which is like okay for completing chaos, but you'd rather just have like a much stronger heal, which this does give. So like Orlea is not too terrible, but I think she ends up just being a backpack unit. And I know that people do clear things with Orlea and hard content, but she's just not that impressive to me personally as like a support compared to Ray or Mika. Cassius and Nia. I mean, Cassius is a little better than Nia is, but the issue is once again that like you have no control over Popeye Popper. Therefore, if you're playing a character like if you're playing characters with mostly 0 and 1 costs and you get straight, this card's useless. If you're playing like Devil Dice, it's mediocre draw, mediocre damage is fine. Shuffle can very often be like just a waste of 1 mana. Dice Trick goes from being like pretty like very useless because you couldn't proc the quest to being like again just more uselessness because you could proc the quest. Very frequently, Dice Trick ends up being like a 2 mana and deal damage, which would then trigger the random straight that you procced. But he's just not very good. He's much better outside of Chaos once you have him built up inside Chaos, because he's a character that needs so many things going properly for him that he just ends up being really whatever. And then the final character, Nia, very similar to Cassius. I think Nia is like kind of ironically like probably more similar to Mika than anything, where she does technically have some decent healing, because if you look at the bottom here, if you have E6, you get some more healing, and then she obviously comes with 2 basic heal cards. She doesn't have great power healing though, because if you look at Soul Rip, let me just go from the top, right? So G Chord, none of these have healing. They're all just like mana cheats, and they're all like usually recycling themselves, like the mana cost, because obviously a lot of these are like activate a card, and usually if you're not playing her with like Haru or Khalipe, you'll almost always be activating like a 1 mana card. So this isn't even like a super efficient effect in general for Chaos. Mute Accent has a singular heal version, and you're playing her with Veronica, who's supposed to be the strongest like generic character in the game. This activates Ballista, which is like very useless. Otherwise, you get no healing from this, and they're all discards, which means that like you go card negative in Chaos, and you already have very limited draw in Chaos. So this doesn't even end up being that powerful, because usually the cards themselves are a lot better than having extra attack from Nia, right? Soul Rip is really the only form where you have burst healing through the top right Epiphany version, but like otherwise you get decent healing generically unless you hit the bottom right or bottom left. But like you don't really discard that much for the Soul Rip unless you have a perfect hand of like Mute Accent and Adagio, right? So, or yeah, because it's only a card in hand, it's not a card from deck. So, Nia's Curiosity won't even proc this properly. So, she has a problem where like her card efficiency isn't actually that good because of how many discards there are, and the fact that like some of them are just like generic cycles, which is okay but not that good. And she has no like real utility outside of that. Obviously, again, she has really strong power levels outside of Chaos because of how Adagio interacts with Eternal Hunger, but that's like skipping all the bells and whistles you have to get engaged with before you get to that point. Adagio is by far her best generic skill because you do get to cycle out a lot of bad cards that you otherwise draw in Chaos. Like these top three rather are all very, very powerful even in Chaos. And these bottom 3 are like okay because usually you're cycling anyways, and again, usually you're like very generally speaking, you're probably having a lot of discard targets as well. The main thing is like this bottom middle one is like very variable because you need to get Decibel, and Decibel is kind of hard to farm because it's only through Soul Rip and only through G Chord, and therefore if you get Adagio too early, it's useless. And every other Epiphany for Adagio doesn't have that issue, right? So yeah, it's like Adagio is like very powerful, but like it's just a generic draw card, which a lot of other characters have in spades. And Nearest Curiosity is 0 mana because you get the potential for it. This is honestly very good, or rather, I think it's E1, right? Yes, you have to get Ego 1 for it. So you have to have a dupe for Nearest Curiosity to be truly a good card. So this is like a 0 mana draw 1, but you get to choose the card you draw, which is very, very good. But that just means that Nia, generically speaking, after you get all of your Epiphanies, because all of these good cards are Epiphanies, is only like just a decent draw engine. So that's why she's a backpack as well. So yeah, that'll be it for this video. I didn't talk about the last 5 characters, and it's still super long because I want to do a decent analysis for all the Chaos runs and all that stuff. But hopefully that was really helpful if you're just trying to get into the game and you're curious about all these characters. I hope you guys had a really good holiday. I think I'll be posting this video like right before New Year's, so I hope your New Year's goes super well as well. So yeah, see you guys next time. Bye-bye.